Welcome to Behind the Scenes. I am your host, Hector Montalvo. This show is dedicated to asking tough questions for you, the viewers. We bring you their responses, and we let you decide. Joining us here today at our MCTV studios, we are happy to be sitting with licensed forensic investigator and expert witness, Mr. Zed McLaughlin. Mr. McLaughlin, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Hector. Happy to be here.
Thanks. Zed, for all those viewers that don't know who you are and what is a licensed forensic investigator and expert witness, why don't you tell us who you are and what that is?
Well, I'm an expert in audiovisual, and well, I started out to be an expert in audiovisual and computer technology. I'm an engineer. Basically, what a forensic expert witness investigator does is he gathers evidence and writes a report. And in my case, I'm not one of those expert witnesses who says, well, in my opinion. What I do is I lay out the facts, the evidence, the exhibits, so that they tell the story. And when I go into court and I'm asked my expert opinion, I say, well, Exhibit A demonstrates this, plus Exhibit B demonstrates that. And basically I write reports. Some of them have digital readouts of tapes or video or any technology, police dispatch tapes. I've worked for DAs, analyzing phone conversations with cocaine dealers. And so it's just an expert who can be called into court to resolve differences between the parties, whether it's insurance companies and claimants, or, as I said, DAs and defendants, whatever.
Now, you played a big part in discovering some major stuff, and I guess, and you also played a big part in the resignation of Chief Justice Marshall. Altering of court transcripts. Tell us about that.
Well, the first time I get into it was with the kidnapping of my own son. Kidnapping in court under color of law. I didn't, like everybody else, I expected, well, let me just go back. I got into forensics in 1982. Between 1982 and 1994, when my son was kidnapped, I operated in a court system that was honest. I won every one of my cases because I don't take on cases unless the evidence is there to prove my client's whatever, innocence or prosecutorial stance or whatever. For me, the court system worked during that period of time. But when I got involved in family courts, which are not courts of law, it took me years to discover that they don't follow the rules of evidence. They don't follow anything but what the judge believes. And that's not constitutional. It's not American. It has no place here. And it's been imported from Soviet Russia, where if you're part, or Nazi Germany, if you're part of the party, judges believe you. They abandon the evidence, and you know, the insiders basically win. I was shocked to find out. I requested tapes so I could get transcripts of my hearings, and I said, well, where's my ex-wife's entire perjured testimony? Gone. And so I thought that, well, now that I've discovered that, I'll win my case. No. My docket was next to be altered. The transcripts were altered. Courts don't allow you to bring recording devices in so that they can edit the presentation of your evidence out of the transcript or the hearing tape or whatever. Anything that goes against the judge's ruling, they edit out of the tapes and out of the transcripts. And it's just horrible to have your family destroyed or your children kidnapped or whatever by way of courts that operate as criminal enterprises. So yes, I'm recognized as the first person to prove, certainly, you know, not the first person to complain about courts editing tapes or altering transcripts, but I'm the first person to prove it because I had the wherewithal to bring witnesses in just to document what goes on in the courtroom so that they can provide affidavits to show what's missing. When I went to federal court, I think I was telling you this off camera, that I went to federal court knowing how they operate in state courts. I figured maybe the same thing would be happening in federal court. Sure enough, the 6 witnesses, when we left the federal courthouse in Boston, we shot a video after coming out of the courthouse saying that the judge said outrageous statements such as judicial robes give judges immunity. All that stuff has been gone, you know, edited out of the official transcript. But I have 6 eyewitnesses who wrote affidavits. They're up on the website, up on my website. And, you know, we all wrote those affidavits before the transcripts were made available. They held the transcripts back for months and months and months because there's a lot of red flags that you, one way of realizing that your tapes have been or are being altered is they try not to give them to you, to make them unavailable. But yes, I'm recognized as the first person to prove that courts operate as criminal enterprises where they alter all of the records, every record, the docket, the case file, the impounded files, the transcripts, the hearing tapes have all been altered in my case.
And the fact that they don't allow cameras in the courtroom is one thing. The fact that they're also making their own laws by sitting on the bench, is that a job of a judge? Or
No.
is it, what is a job of a judge?
You're right. In my case, I appealed I went to the appeals court because I was getting nowhere in family court. Went to the appeals court, and the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts took up the case under its own volition. In other words, nobody petitioned the Supreme Judicial Court with Margaret Marshall to take up the case on the record. So they took it up, and 3 months before, in family court, I explained to the judge that the appeals court had taken up, the Supreme Judicial Court had taken up the case, and the judge asked why they would do that, why they would take it up under their own volition, and I said to rewrite the anti-SLAPP law, because that was the technicality that the judge dismissed the case on in the lower court. So went to Supreme Judicial Court, and the judge and the lawyers mocked me in front of my son in court, in public, and said, oh, they wouldn't do that. Well, they did. They rewrote the anti-SLAPP law to immunize women who commit perjury in court to gain custody of children, and that was in the guise of my wife, my ex-wife, and her new husband, who is a governor appointee to the Abuse Commission. He submitted fraudulent clinical evaluations as a social worker. Well, the Supreme Judicial Court, the same 4 judges that voted to legalize gay marriage, gave immunity to women who commit perjury and to social workers who knowingly submit fraudulent clinical evaluations. Now, Hector, isn't that a boon for the divorce and the abuse industries, where you're guilty just, on the basis of a fraudulent clinical evaluation by a social worker that you've never met? They've never talked to you on the phone. They've never interviewed you clinically, and yet they're submitting clinical reports on you. that you don't even know about.
And these are also considered AGL, appointed by the courts, and most likely they're appointed by judges who basically are friends of those particular judges.
Right. They get their money. They know where their what side their bread is buttered on, and basically, if you're involved in a case where a judge appoints a master or a GAL or something like that, you're being set up. And the way that it works is the guardian ad litem. If you're a man, they never find a man who's qualified for custody of the children. Never. It's a completely gender-biased system. And that's bad enough, but they go ahead and alter all the court records to find you not qualified for custody, and then they whack you with child support. And as you know, as we were talking about, the judges make money personally from generating child support.
And I agree with that, and I just want to state to the viewers that we have multiple times invited representatives of the Family and Probate Court into the show, and we have gotten no response. We have directed our communications to Joan Kenny, who is the spokesperson for the courthouse, and it is my opinion that this is a person that's a leech, wasting taxpayer dollars, and should not be in the position that she's in. Being said that, it is also my understanding that the particular the Department of Justice played a part in the resignation of Chief Justice Marshall.
Well, the House Judiciary Committee in Washington, D.C. I was contacted by them, and they informed me that after 16 years of tyranny and oppression by judges and lawyers, and I've been dragged from my car and beaten by 2 off-duty policemen who told me not to show up in court anymore, I would never see my son again. Well, I went back to court. I've never seen my son again. It's a shock when people discover that the court systems are so thoroughly corrupt. It scares them. It's really, because where do the haves beat the have-nots? In court.
I will just publicly state as well that the criminal side of the legal system do provide people with their due process and the rights to be treated equal and the rights to a jury trial and the rights to be heard. And this is something that you do not get in the civil court system, such as the Family and Probate Court.
That's correct. As I said, they're not courts of law, so the judges there are just arrogant as can be, and believe that they are not subject to any review by any higher judges. And of course, the family courts are not the only ones that are corrupt. The higher courts, the Massachusetts Appeals Court, they altered my records also. The federal court in Boston altered my records. The Federal Judicial Conduct Committee just lie after lie after lie. And I can prove this stuff because up on my website is the annotated transcript that shows all the places where the judge stifled me. I said, "Judge, may I present this evidence?" She said no, but yet the Judicial Conduct Committee said she didn't stifle me. And I've got arrows pointing to the 19 places in the transcript where the judge stifled me. So basically, they've abandoned evidence, and it's so political. It's based on gender bias. It's based on how much money the courts can make, can plunder from federal government. That's basically what it's all about, is destroying families, human trafficking for profit. That's what occurs in family courts and all the higher courts, all the way up to, as I was saying, the House Judiciary Committee. They're all in on it. And even though these judges think that they're above the law and that they have immunity, and in fact, the judge in federal court told me that judges' robes are what give them immunity. Robes. I mean, it's like the Dark Ages in Europe, with the Pope and the robes and all that stuff. They actually believe that stuff. And our court systems operate as if it is In fact, that's the title of the book I'm working on, Dark Ages in America.
So there's no truth to the saying that no one is above the law, except judges. Is that right?
Oh, and their GALs, anybody who's an extension of the judges have, quote, immunity. There's no such thing as immunity. How do they interpret all men are equal before the law? Lady Justice holding the scales, she's blindfolded because the court is not supposed to recognize the status of any of the parties in the courtroom. They're supposed to just administer the law. That's a joke. We don't have a civil redress in America. We don't have an honest court system in America.
Now, explain to our viewers what hate legislation is.
Hate legislation is a phrase I coined for legislation such as the Violence Against Women Act. Now, anybody who has read the Constitution knows about equal protection under the law. So therefore, the Violence Against Women Act, it basically has very little to do with Violence Against Women Act. If you remember the Duke lacrosse case where the 4 lacrosse players got accused, well, the Violence Against Women Act is based on that all judges and prosecutors and such like that will believe a woman's accusations as fact. Again, abandonment of evidence. So they take a woman's allegations against you, and even though Nifong, the district attorney who was prosecuting the 4 lacrosse players, after he discovered that the stripper was lying, he kept on prosecuting the 4 Duke lacrosse players. Now, why did he do that? To keep on double dipping. Not only was his department making state funds, but they were plundering the Violence Against Women Act federal funds. And that's how the federal government is interfering in families and the prosecutions in state courts by offering the prosecutors federal money to prosecute men, no matter how wrongly, for women, even though it's all a fantasy. Now, of course, there is violence against women, but as you know, I'm working on a documentary. I have judges on the documentary from Massachusetts and other states saying that out of the, in their 10 years of service on the bench, that they find about 25 to 30% of the allegations of abuse are actually the only ones that are factual. So you've got an industry operating under the guise of protecting women when it's all about plundering federal funds. Another illustration of hate legislation. Oh, the reason why I called it hate legislation is if you look up the definition of what a hate crime is, it says to focus on one group or individual. And the Violence Against Women Act focuses on prosecuting men. And so the Child Support Incentive Grant gives judges money for creating child support. That's the sole reason why we don't have joint custody in Massachusetts and all the other states. Because judges make money by getting the father out of the family and making him pay child support. As you know, I obtained a copy of the contract from the Department of Revenue kicking back 10% of the $63 million a year that they plunder from federal funds. They give 10% or $6.3 million to the judges that got rid of, decided that altered tapes and transcripts to get to condemn the father, get him out of the family, and make the mother and the children dependent on government. And it's just also un-American, and the destruction of fatherhood and the traditional family is the agenda under which they operate, and they'll go to any lengths to plunder those federal funds, which is bankrupting America.
I will tell you that we have asked and we have obtained those documents from the Family and Probate Court in regards to the child support involvement, and we've tirelessly invited the Department of Revenue. They will give us they will answer specific questions, but they respectfully decline to appear on our show. But it's interesting that you bring that up, because we noticed that the Department of Revenue pays $3.37 million a year to the court system. Mm-hmm. Now, we also found that the Chief Justice Robert Mulligan's office provided to us that the Department of Revenue does not pay any rent for their caseloads in the court systems. We have the proof that they do pay $3.37 million, yet the court does not disclose that information in their finance.
Right.
Why is that?
It's sort of a slush fund, right? Isn't that the answer? I've asked them through the Freedom of Information Act to inform us how that kickback money that goes to the judges who create the child support in the first place, where does that money go? And they didn't give us an answer under the Freedom of Information Act. So, I mean, it's a slush fund that they divide up any way they want. It's a human trafficking for profit scheme where judges make money, lawyers make money, court personnel makes money, and the police makes money out of all these incentive grants. And it really has very little to do with protecting women. It's all about the bucks.
And we know that the police department do receive grants from special interest groups such as the domestic violence industry, the Jane Doe Foundation, as well, sure, for training. And these are domestic violence special interest group training these particular officers for that grant.
Well, interestingly, the reason I discovered all this stuff, and I was shocked every time I discovered a new crime that they were operating. My ex-wife married a social worker, an appointee of Governor Weld to the Abuse Commission. He boasts in his affidavit, which was the clinical report that condemned me. He submitted it as a professional, even though he never met or interviewed me. He boasts that he was part of the commission. He trains judges, court personnel, police, and other social workers how to, quote unquote, deal with domestic violence. What that means is trains them how to condemn the father in court and plunder as much federal funds for the state of Massachusetts.
Now, why these people behind bars? I mean, I know that when we go in, the people go in, and they violate the law, they go to jail.
Well, let me put it in question form, so I'm just not stating how it is. Do you believe that all the information that's, you've seen on my website and all the ancillary investigations that you have done yourself, don't you think the country has been taken over by judges and lawyers in a conspiracy, that they operate above the law? And the way that judges get their judicial appointments is by political graft. They pay every federal judge, paid a senator or something like that, campaign contributions to get their judicial appointment. So the whole syndrome of being a judge starts on under the table money. So is it a surprise that they then demand that lawyers give them money for their judicial rulings? It's pretty insidious.
It definitely is. It definitely is. What do you think needs to be done so that judges and all those who act under the color of law are held accountable?
Well, I'm going to write to these budget committees in Washington, and they're trying to and the Tea Party and such like that, they're trying to make government smaller. Well, get rid of the whole violence against women department. It's all they do is hate. 75% of the time they're prosecuting hate crimes. from vindictive women against men, and most of them, the overwhelming majority of them, are false allegations. Do you remember the 242 children that were taken from that ranch in Texas? Okay, the woman, she was a 32-year-old woman who made the call and pretended she was a 15-year-old girl living on that ranch. She said that she was being forced to have sex. Well, they went in there, and even after they discovered that that woman wasn't 50 years old, she was 32 years old, and she had made false allegations and destroyed people's lives 3 times before. She doesn't get prosecuted. Women, and like I said, the Supreme Judicial Court in Massachusetts immunized women's perjury. And I did do a bill of address. I went to the state representative, Philip Travis, who is the author of the anti-SLAPP law, and after I showed him all of my information, and he interviewed my lawyer and Mike Franco's lawyer, he's a victim of the new anti-SLAPP law. Representative Travis submitted a bill of address to remove Margaret Marshall for rewriting his anti-SLAPP law. And if you remember, the judges mocked me in front of my son in court for even suggesting that the Supreme Judicial Court would legislate from the bench. So Philip Travis, he sponsored the bill of address to remove Margaret Marshall because of treason.
Well, I can tell you that this is a very hot topic here with the probation scandal going on.
Exactly.
You know, with judges acting under the color of law, the restraining order abuses, and so on. I'd like to invite you back on our show at a future date to finish up these discussions. Really quick, if you don't mind telling our viewers, how can they go and visit your website to get this information?
Thank you. Yes, they can go to www.justiceforfamilies.us.
Great.
Justiceforfamilies.us. There's a lot of information there, and I'm trying to help families who are falsely accused and their children taken away. I'm trying to get them to accuse the courts of being criminal, give them the information which they can use to accuse the courts of being criminal enterprises that act on false allegations of abuse rather than facts.
I agree, and I'll state that you know, the courts are paid by taxpayer dollars, and they should be open and transparent. And those that are not open and transparent and refuses to answer these particular questions, like Chief Justice Paula Carey and also Joan Kenney, the spokesperson who is responsible to address the issues, they refuse to comment on these issues, and those two should resign, and should resign immediately. But I've called for that resignation.
Well, next time you contact them, issue a challenge from me to debate the issue anywhere, anytime.
We will, and I want to thank you for coming in today.
Sure,
I look forward to having you again. I want to thank the crew at MCTV, the staff at MCTV. I want to thank you at home for watching. Join us next time as we go behind the scenes to ask the tough questions, bring you their responses. We let you decide. Thank you for watching.